The moment my brother laughed at me in that courtroom, I almost smiled. Not because anything was funny, because for the first time in my life, he was about to discover how little he actually knew about me. "No lawyer," Derek said loudly enough for everyone in the room to hear. "You're finished." A few people chuckled. My father smiled from across the courtroom. Their expensive attorney leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed. And there I stood alone. No legal team, no family beside me, no one supporting me, just me, a stack of documents, and 32 years of being underestimated. 5 hours later, my father would collapse onto the courtroom floor, and everything my family believed about me would shatter. My name is Carolyn Reeves. I was 32 years old, an Army officer, and the daughter nobody in my family had ever truly valued. Growing up, my older brother Derek was the center of everything. If he forgot his responsibilities, it was an accident. If I made a mistake, it was a character flaw. If he got average grades, my father said he was trying his best. If I brought home straight A's, the first question was always why one score wasn't higher. For years, I thought maybe something was wrong with me. Maybe I really wasn't enough. Maybe I deserved to be invisible. Then my grandfather changed everything. Colonel Thomas Reeves, retired Army officer, Vietnam veteran, the only person who ever looked at me and saw value. When I was 13, after one particularly painful argument with my father, I sat alone behind Grandpa's garage trying not to cry. He sat beside me and handed me a bottle of root beer. After a long silence, he asked, "Do you know why they're wrong about you?" I shook my head. He smiled, "Because they're measuring you with the wrong ruler." I never forgot those words. At 18, I joined the Army. My father hated the decision. He said I would fail. He said I wasn't strong enough. He said I would come home within months. Before I could respond, Grandpa stood up from the dinner table. "I remember saying those exact same things to you when you enlisted." The room went silent. For the first time in my life, my father had no answer. I left home a week later, and I built a life without their approval. The military gave me something my family never had: merit. Nobody cared who my father was. Nobody cared about family politics. Results mattered, discipline mattered, performance mattered, and for the first time, I thrived. Year after year, I earned promotions, leadership positions, commendations, responsibilities most people my age never imagined. Every achievement felt like proof that my grandfather had been right all along. Yet nothing changed at home. When I became an officer, my father changed the subject. When I bought my first house, he asked why I wasn't married. When I received awards, he talked about Derek. And Derek, he drifted from one disaster to another. Failed businesses, bad investments, broken relationships. Every mistake was followed by another rescue from my father. The pattern never changed. Then my mother passed away unexpectedly. The little stability our family still had disappeared. My father became bitter. Derek became more entitled. And my grandfather became the only family member I still felt connected to. I called him every Sunday. Sometimes we talked for hours. Sometimes we barely talked at all. Those calls became one of the most important parts of my life. Then came the phone call I had always feared. Grandpa had suffered a stroke. I flew home immediately. When I entered his hospital room, he looked weaker than I had ever seen him, but he still smiled. He squeezed my hand and said, "Still carrying the family on your back?" I laughed, trying to. "Good," he said. Those were the last meaningful words we ever shared. 2 weeks later, he was gone. At the funeral, I stood beside his casket feeling like I had lost the only person who had ever truly believed in me. A week later, the will was read. At first, everything seemed normal. Family heirlooms, donations, keepsakes. Then the attorney reached the main section. The room changed instantly. My grandfather's estate was worth several $1,000,000. Properties, investments, savings accumulated over a lifetime, and the majority of it was left to me. Not Derek, not my father, me. The silence lasted 3 full seconds. Then Derek laughed. He genuinely thought it was a mistake. My father demanded the attorney read it again. He did. The result didn't change. Derek's smile vanished. My father's face turned red. Then came the accusation. I had manipulated an old man. I had pressured him. I had stolen their inheritance. 3 weeks later, they sued me. Undue influence, fraud, manipulation. They wanted the entire will invalidated, and they were absolutely convinced they would win. I made a decision that shocked everyone. I would represent myself. No attorney, no legal team, just me. When my father heard, he laughed. Derek laughed harder, and on the first day of trial, Derek leaned over and whispered, "You're finished." The plaintiffs hired one of the most respected probate attorneys in Ohio. His reputation alone intimidated people. The courtroom was packed. Everyone expected the same outcome: powerful attorney versus a woman representing herself. Easy victory. At least that's what they thought. The attorney spent the first day building a careful narrative. He argued that I had become too close to my grandfather, that I had isolated him, influenced him, controlled him. The strategy was smart. And honestly, If the facts had supported it, it might have worked. But facts don't care about narratives. Throughout the proceedings, I remained calm. I asked only a few questions, took notes, waited. By lunch, my father looked victorious. Derek practically looked ready to spend the inheritance. Then came the second day, and everything changed. When Judge Raymond Holloway entered the courtroom, he was carrying two files. One was the estate case. The second was much thicker. I recognized it immediately. My military personnel record, the complete version, not the public summary, the full file, years of training, leadership evaluations, federal certifications, investigative work, legal education, everything. The judge had spent the evening researching who I actually was. The opposing attorney noticed the file too. For the first time, I saw concern in his eyes. Proceedings began. After several motions, the judge looked toward the attorney. Then he asked a simple question. "Counselor, do you believe Ms. Reeves is at a disadvantage because she is representing herself?" The attorney nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." The judge opened the file. The courtroom fell silent. He began reading. Advanced legal training, financial investigations, federal testimony, years of experience handling complex cases and regulatory matters. Page after page, achievement after achievement. The room grew quieter with each one. Finally, Judge Holloway closed the file, looked directly at the attorney, and said the sentence that changed everything. "Ms. Reeves does not need a lawyer." Silence, absolute silence. Derek stopped smiling. My father frowned. The attorney grabbed the file and started reading for himself. Then suddenly he froze. The color drained from his face. "Oh my God," he whispered. My father immediately demanded to know what was wrong. The attorney handed him the file. "Read it." My father began turning pages. I watched something happen that I had never seen before. His confidence disappeared. Then his certainty. Then his arrogance. For the first time in 32 years, he was looking at the truth instead of the version of me he had invented. He was reading about accomplishments he never bothered to ask about, responsibilities he never cared to understand, a life he had never taken seriously. Page after page revealed the daughter he had spent decades dismissing. And suddenly, the reality became impossible to ignore. The weak daughter he mocked, the child he underestimated, the person he treated as second best, had quietly become the most accomplished member of the entire family. His hands started trembling. The file slipped. His face turned pale. Then his knees gave out, and he collapsed onto the courtroom floor. Medical staff rushed forward. People stood. Voices filled the room. Chaos erupted around us. But I didn't move. I simply sat there, calm, steady, watching the truth do what no argument ever could. Because sometimes revenge isn't shouting. Sometimes it isn't winning. Sometimes it's sitting quietly while reality introduces you to people who never bothered to know who you were. And as I watched my father's world collapse around him, I finally understood something my grandfather had known all along. The problem was never that I wasn't enough. The problem was that they had been measuring me with the wrong ruler.